Lately, I've been realizing something about the RPGs that end up living in my head for months afterward. It's usually not the combat, not even the farming. It's the people. A lot of upcoming RPGs seem to be leaning harder into that lately. Not just here's a romance option, but worlds that actually feel lived in, messy, comfortable, sometimes lonely in a weirdly real way. So today, I wanted to share a few upcoming RPGs with social sim elements that already feel kind of difficult to leave behind, and they're not even out yet. One of the biggest surprises for me is Runa. At first glance, it looks like this colorful fantasy JRPG with turn-based combat, elemental powers, floating ruins, all of that cool classic RPG stuff. But outside the dungeons and combat, there's this huge focus on relationships and everyday life. You can spend time with characters, build friendships, go on dates, shape how people see you through dialogue choices, and slowly build up your own home in the city of Enith. It also doesn't separate the cozy stuff from the adventure stuff, if that makes sense. Farming, fishing, cooking, crafting, decorating your base, it all feels woven into the journey instead of feeling like side content you forget about after 10 minutes. There's a day and night cycle, weather changes, semi-open areas to explore, and these really soft hand-painted visuals that make everything feel calmer and warmer than a lot of high-intensity RPGs lately. So if you're someone who misses older JRPGs, but also wants stronger social sim elements, the bonding, the routines, the feeling of belonging somewhere, Runa genuinely feels like one worth keeping an eye on. Then we have White Raven, where you play as Jin, a young spirit whisperer caught in the middle of a fight over who deserves to become the next god. Which already sounds huge and dramatic, and it is. But the part that caught my attention wasn't really the save the world side of things. It's the camp. You're traveling with outcasts, survivors, people carrying their own baggage, and over time your little sanctuary starts feeling less like a party menu and more like a temporary home. You cook together, train, talk after difficult missions. Sometimes people agree with your choices, sometimes they really don't. And I like that the game seems willing to let relationships become complicated instead of always neat and supportive. So if you enjoy narrative-heavy RPGs, where the emotional downtime matters just as much as the battles, this feels worth waiting. Next, we have Forlorn Memories, which feels like one of those RPGs where you could accidentally spend hours just living in the world. Yes, there's a big story here, missing memories, political conflict, strange creatures, a steampunk-inspired fantasy world slowly falling apart in certain places. You play as Gavin or Arya, both trying to uncover who they really are while navigating wars, factions, and all these dangerous mysteries surrounding the world. You can chase answers, fight monsters, explore ruins, or slow down for a while and focus on gardening, fishing, crafting, raising pets, taking care of little spirit creatures, and building relationships with people around you. And I think that flexibility is what makes it stand out to me. I really like that the game doesn't treat the peaceful life as lesser than the adventure. Settling down, building friendships, finding love, those choices seem just as meaningful as chasing power or uncovering secrets. If you like RPGs where exploration, social bonding, cozy routines, and emotional storytelling all kind of blur together, this feels like a very easy one to keep an eye on. And then there's My Time at Evershine. This time you're not just managing a workshop, you're helping build an entire settlement from the ground up as its governor. Recruiting settlers, deciding how the town grows, building restaurants, hot springs, homes, community spaces, all while protecting the region and helping people settle into this new life together. NPCs apparently display gifts you give them inside their homes now. Which sounds tiny, but those little touches are usually what make worlds feel alive to me. And socially, this already sounds much bigger than previous My Time games. There's co-op now, so you can build a town with friends. and romance still plays a huge role. Characters have their own stories and personal struggles, and it seems like the game wants the settlement to feel warm and collaborative instead of just productive. So if you love life sims, where building the town is just as important as building relationships, Evershine really feels like one of the more promising ones coming up, especially for players who want something cozy and bigger in scale without losing that softness the series is known for. Next is Autonomica, where you're rebuilding farms and communities in a world where time itself has started breaking apart. During the day, you're farming, decorating your home, helping rebuild settlements, getting to know NPCs, forming relationships, and shaping what these communities eventually become after everything fell apart. Pretty familiar cozy sim stuff. Eventually, your farm can evolve into this huge automated system with drones, conveyor belts, clean energy, futuristic machines, all while you're investigating strange temporal disasters and traveling into unstable future timelines for resources. If you love optimizing systems and building giant production chains, it's there. If you'd rather just farm, explore, decorate, and take things slowly, it sounds like that's still completely valid too. So if you enjoy games that experiment a little more with the farming sim formula, especially if you like automation builders, survival games, or sci-fi mysteries mixed into your cozy routines, Autonomica feels very worth watching right now. Then we have Bestiario. The game takes place in this version of Spain, shaped by folklore, myths, and the aftermath of a pandemic that changed the world in strange ways. You follow a group of hunters, witches, and outcasts, traveling through cities, forests, hidden sanctuaries, and magical ruins, while trying to unravel a growing supernatural mystery. What caught my attention most, though, is the social sim side. Because despite all the darker fantasy elements, the game doesn't seem interested in making you rush from battle to battle non-stop. Like Persona 5, there's a calendar system, so your days are split between story progression and just living in the world a little, hanging out with party members, exploring towns, building friendships, or romance over time. Combat also looks way more active than I expected for a turn-based RPG. It takes inspiration from Grandia, so timing and positioning matter a lot. If you love the social side of Persona 5, or fantasy settings that explore mythology we rarely get to see in games, Bestiario already feels like the kind of game people get emotionally attached to without realizing it at first. Then we have Farnia Village. You wake up with almost no memories, just your name. And instead of immediately throwing you into some giant chosen one storyline, the village kind of takes you in. People help you settle down. You start building routines, farming, cooking, taking care of monsters. And honestly, I think that softer beginning is part of the charm. Your crops help strengthen you, and monsters aren't only enemies, some can fight beside you or help out around the farm. Cooking ties into relationships, and festivals matter. And then outside the village, things get more adventurous. There are ruins changing with the seasons, bosses, action combat, magic, weapon switching, but weirdly, the game still feels cozy underneath all of it. Which honestly makes sense, considering people connected to Rune Factory are involved here. So if you love games where farming, romance, exploration, and daily routines all blend together naturally instead of feeling separated into different systems, Farnia Village already feels very easy to get emotionally attached to. Next is the Silent Kingdom. You play as Princess Erinys, trying to save her kingdom from this devastating curse, but the story doesn't really frame things as simple good or evil choices. A lot of the decisions feel uncomfortable on purpose. And honestly, I think the relationship writing is what makes the game stand out. The dialogue doesn't feel built around hunting for approval points all the time. It feels more focused on shaping Erinys as a person. How she responds to pressure, who she trusts, who she pushes away. I find I'm getting attached to the companions already. especially because their personalities bounce off Erinis in such different ways. One feels safer and gentler, the other is harder to read and more guarded. It's still in early access, so yeah, there are rough spots. But the heart behind it feels very obvious. So if you enjoy story-heavy RPGs, social sims, or otome-style games where relationships genuinely shape the emotional experience, The Silent Kingdom feels like one of those games that could stick with people for a long time. And then there's Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. The game revolves around the heroic games, basically this massive gladiator-style competition ruled over by someone called the Divine Sovereign. Fighters from all over enter, hoping their wish will finally be granted. But the deeper you look, the more everything starts feeling layered. Ancient crests, heroes' relics, political tension, and a lot of people who clearly are not telling the full truth. It doesn't feel like a straightforward save-the-world fantasy right away. It's more like everyone's carrying their own agenda into this tournament, and you're slowly trying to figure out who you can trust while building relationships in the middle of all the chaos. I'd especially keep an eye on this if you love strategy RPGs, where the social side matters just as much as the battles. If you enjoy the relationship building in Persona, the emotional tension of modern Fire Emblem, or games where every faction believes they're the right one, this already feels like the kind of game people are going to spend months theorizing about. Then we have Stand By Me Otome Isekai RPG. You play as a normal girl who dies in an accident and wakes up in another world as Ciel, this incredibly talented royal sorceress. Except there's one huge problem. You remember your old life, but not hers. So while everyone around you expects this confident, powerful mage who clearly knows what she's doing, you're basically standing there internally panicking and trying not to get exposed. And the thing that really makes the game stand out isn't even the fantasy politics or battles, but the daily life stuff. The social sim side feels like the actual heart of the experience. During free days, you can wander around town, raise social stats, go on quests together, give gifts, flirt, even unlock extra scenes depending on how your relationships develop over time. And I genuinely think the comic strip battle system helps the game stand out too. Instead of static combat menus, your choices play out through illustrated panels, which somehow makes emotional scenes feel more dramatic and intimate at the same time. I'd especially recommend this for players who love relationship-heavy RPGs, otome games, social sims, or fantasy stories where the characters become the reason you keep playing. And then we have High Times, which might honestly have one of the strangest premises here, but also one of the most emotionally grounded. You run a donut shop called the Hot Box in a world where people can literally eat their feelings. So every donut you make affects someone's emotions. And I kinda love that idea. Customers come in carrying heartbreak, awkward tension, unresolved feelings, and your choices, including what food you give them, can completely change conversations, relationships, and outcomes. At the same time, your exes start showing up at the cafe too, which immediately tells you this game is probably going to get messy emotionally in a very human way. It also seems very character-focused. Between decorating the cafe, unlocking recipes, and getting to know regular customers, a huge part of the appeal feels like simply becoming attached to the people who keep walking through the door. If you like slower games about people, second chances, awkward conversations, and emotional honesty, with donuts in the middle of all of it, this honestly looks really refreshing. And if at least one game in this video made you stop and go, wait, okay, I need to look that up, then definitely subscribe. I'm always digging through upcoming farming sims, life sims, and narrative RPGs to find the ones that actually feel worth your time. Moving on is Wild Society. You play as Vivian Wild, a witch running this elegant boarding house in the early 1900s town of Fairhaven. So instead of spending most of your time planting crops or grinding resources, a lot of the gameplay revolves around people. Guests, conversations, social events, romance, gossip, the kind of small-town tension where who sits next to who at dinner somehow matters a lot. And the vibe is really what makes it stand out to me. It's like Bridgerton decided to invite witches, seances, magical creatures, and emotionally complicated rich people into the story. You're decorating this huge manor, hosting tea parties and ballroom gatherings, helping spirits move on from unfinished business, and managing tenants who may or may not completely change the direction of your story depending on how you treat them. So if your favorite part of cozy games is usually the characters, aesthetics, and emotional immersion, rather than optimizing farm layouts for 8 hours straight, Wild Society feels very worth paying attention to. Then we have Eastwind. You play as either Esther or Sai, students living in this modern fantasy city where magic is treated almost like a normal part of society. There are classes, friendships, politics, awkward conversations, late-night wandering through the city, trying to figure out adulthood while also trying not to completely fall apart academically or emotionally. It sounds stressful in a very relatable way. People respond to your version of the protagonist instead of a fixed character. Everyone experiences the exact same way. And I really like that the game doesn't seem obsessed with this constant urgency. Because it feels slower, like it's more interested in letting you live inside the city for a while, explore its magical culture, and figure out who matters to you. So, if you enjoy narrative RPGs, visual novels, or companion-heavy fantasy games where relationships and identity feel just as important as plot twists, Eastwind feels like one of those quieter games that could end up surprising people emotionally. Next is Kyoto Xanadu. You follow Rei, a student suddenly pulled into this dangerous otherworld called Xanadu after gaining powers to fight strange creatures. You're attending classes, exploring Kyoto, eating with classmates, hanging around shopping districts after school. Even the stat growth systems are tied into school life through these action cards, which honestly makes the social side feel much more connected to progression instead of feeling tacked on. And I think that's why the game feels more life sim adjacent than I expected. Because yes, there's action combat, fast movement, dodges, counters, big flashy boss fights, but the emotional rhythm seems to come from the downtime, the routines, slowly learning who these characters are outside battle. The city itself also seems important in a way I really like. Kyoto doesn't just feel like a backdrop, it feels lived in, like somewhere you're meant to wander around, relax in, and slowly become attached to over time. So if you enjoy games like Persona 5 or the school life bonding side of Fire Emblem Three Houses, this already feels like a really easy recommendation to keep on your radar. Then we have Witchbrook, where you move to the seaside city of Mossport to attend Witchbrook College. And the entire game seems built around the feeling of slowly settling into a magical everyday life. Going to class, brewing potions, decorating your cottage, helping townspeople, hanging out with your coven after school. You're not constantly casting giant destruction spells. A lot of the magic is tied to helping people, solving little problems, handling errands, and just living as a witch. And socially, this seems very focused on self-expression and relationships. Friendships, romance, fashion customization, decorating your home, part-time jobs, and multiplayer with friends. It's definitely a magical slice-of-life sim rather than a combat-focused RPG. So if games like Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing New Horizons, or Fields of Mystria are already comfort games for you, Witchbrook really feels like it has the potential to become one of those games people quietly disappear into for months. If you've been searching for your next cozy obsession, the next video might surprise you. I'm sharing underrated farming RPGs that deserve way more love, so click on that video next and maybe find your next comfort game.